Hey everyone, this is Jungkook. Before we start, I want to know where you're listening from. Drop your country in the comments below. I want to talk to you like it's just us in a quiet room. No stage lights, no noise, just breath and the small hum you hear when everything else finally calms down. I almost gave up on love. Not because I stopped believing in people, but because I got tired of being the version of myself that only shows the highlights. Success is a loud room. It's clapping hands. It's flashes in your eyes. It's schedules that turn days into something you survive instead of something you actually live. And somewhere along the way, I started to think maybe love just wasn't built for someone like me. I told myself my voice needed all my energy. My body needed all my time. My heart could wait. It always says it can wait. Until one night, it can't. You come home after a rehearsal that stretched past midnight. You put your bag down. You hear the zipper tap the floor, and it's too quiet. You stand in that silence, and it's like a mirror placed in front of your soul. It doesn't judge you. It just asks a simple question. Who are you when no one's watching? I wish I could tell you it changed in a dramatic way. Some big movie moment with rain and a perfect song playing behind it, but it didn't. It changed in a small, honest way. A friend invited me to help at a small weekend class for kids who wanted to sing and didn't have the money or the confidence to try. No cameras, no big announcement, just a basement room that smelled like dust and hope. The ceilings were low, the old speakers buzzed if you pushed the volume too high, and someone had written "Breathe here" in blue marker on the whiteboard. I didn't go there to find love. I went there because I was tired of being loved for the wrong reason. I wanted to remember how it feels to show up without the outfit, the set, the perfect angle. I wanted to hear raw voices and not correct them. Just stand close enough to catch the courage shaking in them. The first time I saw her, she wasn't trying to be seen. She was moving chairs, making space, taping the corners of worn-out sheet music so it wouldn't tear. You know, when someone is so present, they make the whole room pay attention even when they're silent. That was her. She didn't look at me like, "Oh, it's you." She looked at the kids like, "We promised them a safe place and we're gonna keep that promise." When she finally talked to me, it wasn't about who I am on stage. She asked me what kind of student I used to be. I laughed and said I was the kind who never stops practicing even when everyone else is already asleep. She nodded and said, "I like people who practice how they want to be loved." I didn't understand it at first. Practice how you want to be loved? Later I did. She meant be consistent, not flashy. Be patient, not dramatic. Show up when it's boring. Stay when it's quiet. Tell the truth before it turns into a performance. I almost gave up on love because I kept looking for the person who could keep up with the speed of my life. But she didn't try to keep up. She made me slow down. Not with rules, not with control, just with the way she paid attention. When a student's voice cracked, she didn't rush to fix it. She waited. She let the silence carry the fear out of the body. She said, "Try again when your breath returns." That line hit me deeper than she knew. Try again when your breath returns. I had been singing without breathing for a long time. I think a lot of us do that. We chase moments that look like love and forget to inhale our own life in between. I told myself I was guarding my heart, but it wasn't protection. It was avoidance. It's easy to be a perfectionist about love. You can always find a reason why right now isn't the right time, why the person in front of you isn't the one, why the risk is a little too risky. Love is never efficient. It doesn't care about calendars. It doesn't slide cleanly into your schedule. It asks who you are when everything gets rearranged at the last minute. That's what scared me. Not the idea of love, but the version of myself I would have to become to make room for it. With her, I started practicing that person in small ways. Not promises and big words, just small ones kept. I texted when I said I would. I showed up early instead of right on time. I learned to put the phone face down and let the conversation be the only room we were in. People always ask me about the members and how they fit into my life when it comes to love. The truth is, they're part of my heart's map. RM has that calm way of turning chaos into a sentence that finally makes sense. One night, after a long day, I told him I felt like I was walking around my own life as a guest. He listened and then said, "Make a home where you actually live." It sounded simple, but it changed the way I looked at everything. A home isn't a place first. It's the daily honesty you practice with yourself and with someone who can hold it. Jin Hyung brought laughter into the fear. He doesn't run from awkward feelings. He makes a joke and then looks you in the eye until you say the real thing you were avoiding. Suga Hyung knows how to sit with a heavy truth without trying to fix it in the first minute. He taught me that love needs breath and space, like a song that only works because the rest before the chorus lets you feel the rush. J-Hope Hyun carries light like a backpack. I don't know how else to say it. He reminds me that love without small celebrations becomes work, and love isn't supposed to feel like a shift you clock in and out of. Jimin understands tenderness at a level that scares me in a good way. He will ask, "Are you eating well?" And he means, "Are you caring for your future self right now?" Taehyung will look at the sky mid-sentence and point out a color I didn't notice, like he's saying, "Beauty is here! Don't rush past it! All of that is in me when I'm learning how to love." I'm not alone when I choose differently. They're the echoes that make the quiet less intimidating. There was a moment with her that I keep replaying when I think about why I didn't give up. A little boy at the class, maybe 9 or 10, got frustrated because his voice kept shaking on a note. He wanted to cry but was trying to swallow it. She kneeled down and told him, "Your voice isn't failing. Your heart is telling you the truth faster than your mouth can handle. Breathe until they match." I can't explain how those words felt to me. I performed in front of thousands, but in that small room it felt like I was the student, and she was handing me back a piece of myself I had dropped. I realized I wasn't afraid of love. I was afraid of being loved for who I actually am when I'm not a clean recording, when I'm not edited, when I'm just me figuring it out. We didn't start with fireworks. We started with tea that went cold because we were talking too much, with walks that didn't have a destination, with choosing the same corner booth twice because it felt like a page we didn't want to turn yet. I told her I am still learning how to balance everything. She said balance is a verb, not a trophy. I told her I get quiet when I'm overwhelmed. She said silence isn't an alarm, it's a room. Just tell me when you're going in so I don't go looking for you in the wrong place. Do you know how healing it is to hear that? To be told it's okay to be human in real time, not in a caption, not in a speech, but on an ordinary Tuesday when the rain makes the city look honest. The pressure around us didn't disappear. Schedules still stretch, expectations still pull, and people still say things they don't know are heavy. But love doesn't erase pressure. It gives you better lungs. It turns the weight into something you can carry together without making the other person smaller. We had conversations I used to avoid, about privacy, about boundaries, about what we owe to people who love our music and what we owe to ourselves when the music stops. I'm learning that love is not a promise to keep everything the same. It's a promise to keep choosing each other while everything changes. There were days I wanted to run back to what I know: work, repetition, the comfort of exhaustion that feels productive even when it's not. Those are the days I remembered what she showed me. Practice how you want to be loved. If I want patience, I practice patience when I'm tired. If I want honesty, I practice telling the small truth before it grows teeth. If I want presence, I practice putting the phone away, even when the scroll would numb me faster. I used to think the big gestures prove love. Now, I think the proof lives in the boring parts: who takes out the trash without being asked, who remembers how you like your eggs, who notices when your laugh is thinner than usual and doesn't let it pass. Sometimes the world turns love into something decorative, pretty to look at, easy to repost. But love is messy in the best way. It asks you to admit you're scared and show up anyway. It asks you to hold someone's tired and not call it a burden. It asks you to build a life with screws you can tighten later, not a glass house that shatters at the first loud noise. I almost quit because I wanted a version of love that never asked me to slow down or change. The thing she showed me is that I don't have to become less of myself to love. I just have to become more honest with myself. That's a different kind of work, and it pays you back in a different kind of peace. I think about the fans who grew up with us, who have their own lives now, their own late night kitchens, their own quiet mirrors. Maybe some of you are like me, good at caring for others, not always great at letting yourself be cared for. Maybe you keep your heart in storage because you don't want to move it around too much. I get it. But I don't want to keep living like love is a risk I can't afford. I want to live like love is a practice I refuse to abandon. Not perfect, practiced. Not a performance, a presence. Not something I earn, something I learn every day with someone who's learning too. When I sing lately, I hear my breath again. Not just the note, not just the mix, but the breath that carries it. I notice small things, the weight of a cup in my hand, the way morning light finds the floor and stretches across it like a promise. The comfortable silence when you don't need to feel it to prove you're okay. She's shown me how to be here. Not just in a city, not just in a schedule, but in a moment that is enough without being perfect. And once you taste that, it's hard to go back to starving yourself just because it looks disciplined from the outside. I almost gave up on love, but love didn't give up on me. It stood quietly in a basement room with buzzing speakers and a whiteboard that said, "Breathe here," and it waited for me to notice. It put kindness into the boring tasks. It turned hard conversations into bridges instead of walls. It used my friend's wisdom like road signs when I felt lost. It reminded me that real connection doesn't rush. It roots. And now, when the day is long and the noise is loud, I know how to step aside, put my hand on the doorframe, breathe like I mean it, and walk back in with my whole self. Not the perfect one, the honest one, the one that finally understands what she showed me. Practice the love you want to live. And one day you look around and realize you're already living it. The first real test didn't look like a test. It looked like a weekend that wouldn't end. Flights stacked back to back, rehearsals that bled into the kind of exhaustion where your voice and your thoughts trade places. I remember waking up in a hotel room with blackout curtains and forgetting what city I was in. My phone had 20 messages from people who needed something right then, and one from her that said, "Eat something warm." It sounds small, but when everything feels like it's pulling you outside yourself, a message that points you gently back into your body can feel like someone switching the lights on. I stared at that line for a long time and realized how often I ignore basic kindness because it doesn't announce itself with fireworks. I ordered soup and sat on the floor to eat it. It tasted like permission. I used to think love needed big moments to prove it was here. Lately, I think it needs tiny ones to stay. That weekend, the schedule kept trying to swallow me whole. She didn't try to drag me out of it. She made space inside it. "Call me for 5 minutes between flights," she said. "You don't have to be interesting, just be real." So I called. Sometimes I had nothing to say except, "I'm tired." She'd say, "I can hear it," and breathe with me for a count of 4. There's something strangely brave about letting someone hear you breathe when you're not on a mic, when it's not a performance, when it's just your chest admitting it's human. Back home, I told the members it felt like I was learning a new instrument, same heart, different tempo. RM laughed and said, "Then practice scales," which is his way of reminding me that consistency beats intensity. Jin Hyun asked if she eats well and if she laughs easily. He measures people by how they treat their own joy. Suga Hyung said, "Don't rush a good thing into a headline," which landed in me like a quiet warning against turning a living story into a fixed label too fast. J-Hope Hyung brought me snacks and told me to guard the simple routines that keep me gentle, because busy loves to steal gentleness first. Jimin put a hand on my shoulder, he doesn't overtalk this stuff, and said, "Let it be simple if it's simple." Taeyoung, of course, just sent a photo of sunlight across a wooden table with a cup of coffee in the corner, and I understood what he meant. Pay attention to the light you already have. We kept meeting at the kids' class whenever I could sneak in without disrupting the rhythm there. I would co-teach warm-ups, soft humming, slow scales, and watch how she carried a room that wasn't designed to impress anyone. There was a girl who sang like she was apologizing to the air for taking up space. We worked with her for weeks, not pushing, just placing small, patient stones under her feet until she could stand on her own sound. When she finally opened up on a high note, the room didn't explode. It exhaled. That's when I realized love in my life had to feel like that: less explosion, more exhale. Less look at me, more look at what we're building, listen to how it's becoming itself. We had a conversation I'd avoided for a long time about privacy. Not in a dramatic way, just in that late hour where honesty is the only thing left. I told her I'm protective of the parts of my life that have to remain quiet. Not because I'm hiding, but because I'm safeguarding the parts that make everything else possible. She said she doesn't need announcements to feel secure, she needs alignment. Alignment is such a simple word until you try to live it. It means your calendar and your values don't fight every day. It means when I say I'll be present, I put my phone down and actually arrive inside the moment, not just next to it. I asked her what she wants from me that I might not know how to give yet. She thought for a while and said, "Tell me when you can't give it." That answer surprised me with how adult it felt. Not a wish list, a boundary. It changed the way I communicate. Instead of disappearing when I'm overwhelmed, I started saying, "I'm going quiet for a few hours so I don't say something with tiredness that I don't mean." The first time I sent that, I waited for a disappointed reply that never came. She sent a thumbs up and a little bowl of soup emoji. It sounds silly, but that emoji became a whole language between us. Eat, rest, breathe, come back when you're you again. There was a night I wanted to run. Not away from her, away from the vulnerability she kept inviting. We were walking along the river, the kind of evening where the city noise turns soft and the wind feels like clean paper. She asked, very gently, what I'm most afraid of in love. I said the first thing that came to mind, that I'll be more work than I'm worth. She didn't rush in with reassurance. She let the sentence sit between us like a stone we could both see. Then she said, I'm not here for worth measured in ease. I didn't realize I'd been carrying that fear like a hidden weight. Worth measured in ease is an impossible standard for anyone with a complex life. I think a lot of us are trained to make ourselves frictionless so we won't be left. Hearing that I didn't have to be easy to be loved made my lungs feel bigger inside my chest. When rumors tried to guess at my life, I stayed still. There's a difference between privacy and secrecy. One protects, the other distorts. We set simple rules. We don't feed speculation. We don't explain ourselves to strangers who won't live with the consequences. We keep the parts sacred that make the whole thing work. I learned to let people talk without letting their talking move me out of position. Love is a position as much as a feeling. It's where you stand when the wind picks up. It's the hand you reach for without asking. It's the angle of your body towards someone when nothing dramatic is happening. My family asked good questions, loving questions, sometimes hard ones. They wanted to know if she made me softer or sharper. And I realized the answer was both. Softer with myself, sharper about what I give my hours to. The members noticed I started leaving rooms at a normal time instead of trying to stretch one more task out of the night. I wasn't working less. I was spending less energy pretending I didn't need rest. Love rearranged the furniture in my life so the things that actually carry me were easier to reach. I keep remembering a day when the kids' class had a faulty mic that wouldn't stop buzzing. Everyone was annoyed. She unplugged it, pushed it aside, and said, "We have something better." She tapped her chest, then pointed around the room. "We have these." The kids groaned because they liked the thrill of a mic, but they sang anyway. It wasn't as loud, it was clearer. I thought about how often I've leaned on amplification to feel real. Some stories need volume, others need the exact shape of your unamplified voice. This thing with her keeps teaching me when to turn down and when to step up, when to hold, and when to let go. We didn't make a big plan for the future right away. We made small plans that stacked dinners. We cooked badly at first and better later. Mornings where we read in the same room without talking. Weeks where distance tried us and we learned to stay close with kindness instead of constant contact. I'm learning that love doesn't prevent storms. It teaches you where the sturdy walls are. It doesn't keep you from getting wet. It shows you how to dry each other off without blame. Sometimes in the studio, between takes, I picture that blue marker message on the whiteboard, breathe here. I take those 2 words everywhere now. Green rooms, cars that move before my thoughts can catch up, kitchens where the light sits on the countertop like a quiet friend. Breathe here. It's how I remember not to sprint through the best parts. It's how I choose to answer instead of react. It's how I keep from quitting when old habits want me back. I almost gave up on love because I thought it would demand a version of me I couldn't maintain. What it asked for instead was an honesty I can practice. I'm not a finished song. I'm a rehearsal that keeps showing up with a little more truth each time. She doesn't grade me. She grows with me. And that's the point. I think finding someone who isn't trying to be your award, who wants to be your witness, someone who says, I see who you're becoming, I'll meet you there, and I'll meet you here too. The other day, walking out of practice, I caught myself smiling for no reason. Not the camera smile. The small one that happens when your insides match your outsides for a minute. The sky was a color I can't name. The kind Taeyong would, and the air had that clean after rain taste. I texted her nothing special, just a photo of my shoes in the sidewalk, because sometimes that's the truest way to say I'm here, I'm good, I'm coming home to myself. She sent the soup emoji and a heart, and it felt like a whole life in 2 tiny pictures. If you're listening and you're on the edge of giving up, I won't tell you to trust in some perfect story that lands in your lap. I'll tell you to practice the kind of love you want to recognize. Patience when you're irritated. Honesty when you're tempted to edit yourself. Presence when your mind wants to run. Set out 1 bowl, not because you're incomplete, but because you're ready to share what you already have. And when someone shows up who breathes like you want to breathe, who treats the quiet like a room to live in, not a gap to fill, pay attention. Not every good thing announces itself. Some good things: put a hand on your shoulder, tell you to eat something warm, and stay while you do. The day I realized love was changing, my rhythm didn't look dramatic from the outside. It was a Tuesday with rain that couldn't decide if it wanted to fall or hover. I woke up before my alarm, not because of anxiety, but because my mind felt clear. Like someone had opened a window and let the stale air leave. I made breakfast the slow way, not the efficient way. I stood by the stove and watched water take its time to boil. And I felt that quiet shift again, the one where ordinary tasks stop feeling like filler and start feeling like anchor. When I texted her good morning, I didn't try to be clever. I just said what was true. Today, I want to be present enough to notice what's already good. It set the tone for everything that followed. Work didn't lighten up. Rehearsals stacked. Meetings asked for more from the same 24 hours, and the travel calendar looked like a puzzle that had lost the picture on the box. But something in me had stopped negotiating against myself. I began to protect small practices as if they were part of the job. A real meal, a short walk, even if it was just circles in a parking garage. 3 minutes with my eyes closed before stepping into a room where I needed to be fully there. It's strange how quickly life starts listening when you treat your body like a partner and not a machine. The music felt different too. I could hear space around the notes again, like oxygen wrapped each phrase and kept it from collapsing under its own weight. With the members, the conversations got simpler and more honest at the same time. RM would check in between takes with a look that asked, "Are you centered?" And I'd answer without words by just exhaling the way he taught me years ago when everything felt too loud. Jin Hyung dragged me into the kitchen and made me taste a sauce he'd been working on. He said, "Love is like this seasoned over time. You can't rush it without losing what you were trying to build." Suga Hyung sent me a beat late at night and wrote, "Hear the pause, not just the drum," and it landed like advice about more than music. Jae-ho-pyung kept finding ways to celebrate small wins I used to speed past, like getting to bed before midnight or drinking water before coffee. Jimin made me laugh on a day when I forgot how, by reminding me that tenderness is a strength, not a liability. Taehyung kept sending those photos of light on everyday things, a window, a shoe, a chipped mug, until my phone became a quiet gallery of proof that beauty isn't rare. Attention is, there was a conversation with my family I had been putting off, not because they fight me, but because they know me well enough to ask the kind of questions that make me sit still. We talked about patterns, the ones that used to keep me safe but also kept me distant. It's humbling to admit that success can disguise avoidance, that being busy can look noble while it quietly steals the hours you needed to be human. I promised them I was learning to say no to the kind of yes that costs too much, the yes that takes life from the part of me that makes the music worth anything. They believed me not because of the words, but because of the evidence, how I was showing up on slow days, not just the big ones. She and I began to stack rituals without planning them. After long days, we'd send each other one line about what grounded us. A warm bowl of rice, a song that held a hard feeling without fixing it, the smell of rain on concrete, a sentence from a book that stayed. On weekends, when I could be there, we'd return to the kids' class. I'd warm up the room with a low hum and watch courage wake up in shaky throat. She would move through the space like a gentle metronome, helping each kid find a tempo that fit their breath. One afternoon, the power went out and the buzzing speakers finally went silent. The room held its breath as if waiting for permission to stop. She clapped a soft rhythm, the kids echoed it, and we kept going in the dark stairwell where the acoustics turned small voices into something tender and brave. I remember thinking that love is like that when the amplification disappears. What you built with presence stays. We took on the hard topics on purpose, not to prove we were strong, but to train ourselves not to run. Privacy, again. Boundaries with work, with family, with a world that thinks it knows us. Money, which can turn into either a mask or a tool, depending on whether you talk about it. Age, because time isn't a rumor and ignoring it doesn't make it kinder. We didn't solve everything in a night. We agreed to keep solving, like tuning an instrument over and over because the air changes and so do we. She never asked me to be ordinary. She asked me to be consistent. That was new. Consistency is love's favorite language, and I'm learning to be fluent one ordinary day at a time. There was a day the attention got loud again. You know, the kind stories that build themselves without your consent. Headlines that feel like they were written about a stranger using your name. My chest tightened the way it always does when the narrative tries to outrun the truth. I wanted to explain, to correct, to gather every misunderstanding and line it up in front of the fact. Instead, I put my phone down and texted her that I was going quiet for a while so I didn't let noise rent space in my head. She sent back the soup emoji, then a photo of a handwritten note. Choose the room, not the crowd. I took a walk until the wind found the heat in my face and cooled it. I came back to myself the way you return to a melody you almost forgot slowly. With respect. Sometimes love tests you with nothing dramatic, just a steady invitation to stay. Stay when you're bored and think excitement would feel better. Stay when you're anxious and silence would be easier to fill than to feel. Stay when you can't perform your best self. And the only thing you have to offer is the unpolished truth of being tired and trying anyway. We practiced staying. 5 minutes on the phone between two places that didn't feel like home. 10 minutes sitting on a bench where no one recognized us, counting our breaths like beats before the chorus. 20 minutes cooking rice we accidentally burned, laughing at the smoke alarm and opening all the windows like a ceremony for imperfection. The kids taught me as much as we taught them. There was a boy who wanted to quit because the high note kept slipping away. We told him the note would come when his breath got bigger than his fear. He didn't believe us until one Saturday it did, and the look on his face was pure sunrise. I thought about all the times I had asked too much for myself without giving breath, first demanding a performance from a heart that was still catching up. It's unfair to ask your soul to sprint when your spirit needs to walk. I stopped doing that. The work didn't suffer. It deepened. People ask what changed most. I think it's this. I stopped negotiating my values with my calendar. I started protecting the habits that make me kind. When I'm kind, I sing better. When I sing better, I sleep better. When I sleep better, I can tell the truth to the people who matter without my voice shaking. It's all connected in a way I used to ignore because ambition can build you a ladder so tall you forget to climb down and check if the ground is still there. The ground is relationships. The ground is the people who know your unedited laugh and the way your eyes get quiet when you're thinking. The ground is a room where you don't have to be impressive to be welcome. We haven't promised things we can't control. We've promised to keep choosing the small actions that keep love sturdy. We've promised to say the uncomfortable sentence before it grows heavy. We've promised to leave each other better than we found each other on days when life pulls hard. And the best you can do is stand side by side and remember why you started. On my best days, I feel like I'm not just in love, I'm in a practice. I don't need perfection to prove it works. I need the gentle repetition of showing up without armor and finding out I'm still safe. When I look ahead now, it doesn't feel like I'm squinting into fog. It feels like I'm walking a road with good signs. A cup of tea cooling while we talk too long, a text that says, eat something warm, a photo of sunlight across a table, the steady echo of my brother's voices reminding me to breathe, to laugh, to listen for the pause, to celebrate the small, to keep tenderness brave, to see the beauty in the ordinary. I almost gave up on love because I mistook complications for disqualification. What I'm learning is simpler and stronger. Love doesn't erase the complexity of my life. It gives me a way to live it with my whole self intact. And that changes everything. Even on a Tuesday that looks like nothing from the outside and feels like a new beginning from the inside. There was a morning when I woke up and felt like my heart had put everything on a shelf in the right order. Nothing was solved. Nothing dramatic happened overnight. But the clutter in my head had been sorted into keep, give away, and look at later. I ate slowly, not because I had extra time, but because I didn't want to go back to the habit of rushing past the moments that actually make me feel alive. I've started to think of love like that shelves that you organize a little each day so you can find what you need when the noise gets too loud. It's not magic, it's maintenance. And maintenance is what keeps beautiful things from falling apart. The work calendar looked like it always does when the season turns urgent. Travel layered over rehearsals, layered over the kind of meetings where everyone is trying to carry a big idea from the air into the world without dropping it. Old me would have tried to outpace everything until my body reminded me who's boss. New me is trying something different. I block 10 minutes before the first commitment and 10 minutes after the last one where I do nothing performative. I sit, I drink water, I breathe like I'm sending a memo to my nervous system that we're not in a war. It sounds too simple to matter. It matters more than I expected. Even the music changes when I'm not playing tug of war with my own breath. Notes stop sounding like goals and start sounding like places I can stand. My family could tell something in me had settled without closing. Settling without closing is hard for me. I'm used to sprinting into decisions just to stop the discomfort of not knowing. Lately, I let a decision be a home. I move into a box at a time. The conversations with them became lighter and deeper together. We talked about boundaries as acts of love, not as walls. It's still new to say no to some yeses that used to flatter me. I'm learning that when a yes steals too much soul, it wasn't a yes in the first place. It was a fear of disappointment wearing nice clothes. With the members, I feel the safety of people who watched me be a lot of versions of myself and didn't walk away. There's advice I carry from each of them like a pocket talisman. The soft wisdom that says remember to exhale. The humor that takes the sharp edge off a heavy afternoon. The reminder to hear the rest, not just the drum. The celebration of small wins that other rooms wouldn't notice. The courage to be tender, not after the battle, but before it. The attention to ordinary beauty that keeps the soul fed when nothing big is happening. Those threads are woven into how I treat love now. I don't feel like I have to be one person in the studio and another person in the kitchen. I can be whole. which is a relief I didn't know I was starving for. At the kids' class, a recital approached, nothing grand. Just a sharing day for families in a room that smells like fresh pencils and old microphones. I arrived early and adjusted mic stands that never stay where you set them. She moved through the space, checking in with the little ones and with the shy older ones who pretend they don't care. I watched the way she measured each person by what would help them feel safe, not by what would make the room clap. It hit me that this is what I want my love to feel like when life gets busy. A choreography of attention that says, I see you, I see what you need to stand up tall, I'm not here to make you impressive, I'm here to keep you honest and brave. The power flickered once, and you could feel the anxiety rise like heat. Old me would have gone straight to solutions and backup plans the size of a tour. She simply gathered everyone and tried to run through without amplification. The sound wasn't big, it was true. I felt an ache in my chest that wasn't sadness, more like recognition. The parts of me that need volume to feel real are usually the parts that need tenderness instead. After the sharing ended, we stayed to stack chairs and sweep glitter someone smuggled in. Quiet, unglamorous tasks became a soft proof that the life we're building has real floors, not just good lighting. We've been writing down small promises we can keep, not the heavy kind that creates pressure we can't hold on rough days. Promises like I'll tell you, when my capacity is low before I disappear into it, I'll protect the habits that keep me kind. I'll let the day be good without trying to make it perfect. We leave the list in a note on our phones and add to it only when a new truth proves itself more than once. I used to think love needed a dramatic vow to stay. Now I think it needs a short list of ordinary vows repeated with a calm heart, especially when nothing is Instagram worthy. A wave of attention hit again, loud and fast. I won't pretend it didn't rattle me. There's a part of me that wants to edit rumor into truth, just to stop the feeling of being misunderstood. But there's a piece I'm practicing that doesn't require a press release to breathe. We made our position clear to ourselves first. We choose the room over the crowd. We choose conversations we can live with over explanations that feed strangers. We choose a timeline that respects our nervous systems over a timeline that satisfies curiosity. It's not defiance, it's stewardship. My life can't be a public project if I want my heart to keep singing like it's not afraid. On the road, I pack the small rituals that hold me together. A simple tea I make the same way every night. A stretch that tells my spine tomorrow is coming and it won't require heroics. A short message of gratitude I send to someone who will never post it. The first few nights I felt silly, like I was pretending to be a calm person. Then the habits did what habits do. They built me a floor strong enough to stand on when the day had too much gravity. She asked for updates that didn't sound like a report. I sent a photograph of a hallway where the carpet had a pattern that looked like ripples on a lake. She sent the small emoji language we've built. It's amazing how much meaning can fit in gestures when both people have decided to keep them honest. There was a conversation about money that could have gone wrong if either of us had been defensive. We acknowledged what is real and strange about our two worlds meeting. Not to pretend difference doesn't exist, but to make sure the difference doesn't quietly make decisions for us. We agreed on the kind of generosity we want to practice, the kind of simplicity that keeps our choices free, the kind of transparency that lets trust grow on actual ground instead of guesses. I'm still learning how to do that well, but naming the learning out loud turned discomfort into a path instead of a wall. I notice I'm less interested in being impressive and more interested in being trustworthy. Impressive fades in rooms that don't know what to do with it. Trustworthy builds rooms where you can finally rest. When I get the urge to perfect a moment until it shines unreal, I ask what one honest imperfection would keep it human. Sometimes it's admitting I'm tired while still choosing to be kind. Sometimes it's letting a plan be smaller so it can be real. Sometimes it's telling someone I love that I need to be quiet now, not because I'm pulling away, but because I want to come back with my whole self instead of my empty one. I used to chase edges of myself I hadn't earned yet. Now I'm more interested in tending to the center. The center feels like breath I didn't have to fight for, like a kitchen where the light finds a clean counter. like a room full of kids brave enough to sing without a mic. The center feels like the way she pays attention without turning me into a project. It feels like the way my brothers anchor me without asking me to be simpler than I am. It feels like a future I don't have to sprint toward because it's unfolding at the speed of ordinary faithfulness. If I could tell my earlier self one thing, I'd say don't confuse motion with growth. Don't confuse applause with alignment. Don't confuse being needed with being known. Let love make you slower in the ways that matter and stronger in the ways that last. Keep shells for your heart and touch them a little every day. Put the heaviest thing on the lowest level where it can't fall far. Leave space for the beautiful mess you haven't figured out yet. And breathe here somewhere you can see it when the room starts to spin. Because that's the door you'll walk through when you want to quit. And remember, you don't have to. There was a stretch of days where everything felt like it was happening at once. Good things, heavy things, ordinary things that mattered more than they looked. I was moving through airports like they were hallways in a complicated house, switching languages between my mouth and my mind, packing and unpacking the same shirts so often the fabric started to remember my shoulders. Somewhere in the middle of that, love stopped feeling like a plan. I was trying to keep alive and started feeling like a place I could return to without knocking. The difference is subtle until you feel it in your chest. A plan wants proof. A place offers presence. I think that was the week I realized I wasn't chasing love anymore. I was living with it, even when we were far apart. On one of those evenings, I got back to the apartment later than I said I would. The kind of late that used to make me defensive because it sounded like failure out loud. I unlocked the door and the quiet met me like a familiar friend who didn't need me to explain my whole day to be welcome. I set my bag down and stood there for a minute, letting the noise fall off. It's strange how you can carry a hum inside you without noticing until silence tells you to put it down. I thought about the kids from the class and that blue marker message, breathe here, and I did. I boiled water for tea and let it sit a little too long, watching the steam thin into nothing. When I finally sat, I texted her one line. I made it. She sent our little bowl of soup emoji with a tiny heart and added, rest like you mean it. Sometimes it takes only 5 words to make a room feel like it's giving you back your name. The next morning had that clean after rain light Taeyoung is always pointing out, the kind of light that makes even the messy table look intentional. I went for a slow run with nothing in my ears, counting my steps like beats that didn't need a chorus. RM called later and asked about nothing in particular, which is how you know the conversation is the point. We ended up talking about how love doesn't change your priorities so much as it makes your priorities honest. He said, if you want to see what you value, look at what you protect on your worst day. I thought about the tiny habits I've been guarding: water before coffee, food that's warm, the message that says, I'm going quiet instead of disappearing into quiet. It still surprises me how quickly trust grows when you narrate your limits before they show up like weather. Jin Hyung invited me over that night and cooked something that tasted like patience. He laughs when I say that, but it's true, there's a flavor to things you make without rushing. He said, this is what home tastes like when you don't try to impress it. We ate with the kind of silence that doesn't ask to be filled, and he told me I looked less like I was wrestling the world and more like I was living in it. I don't know if there's a better compliment for someone who's been sprinting past his own breath for years. On the way out, he put leftovers in a container and said, share this if you can. I took that literally and not literally. Love is leftovers. You're not embarrassed to offer warm, imperfect, still good. In the studio, Suga Hyung handed me a draft with a note that said, leave more room than you think you need. We weren't just talking about the song. It made me think of how often I have pressed myself into tight spaces because I thought being compact made me easier to carry. It doesn't. It just makes you forget how much air your lungs deserve. The more room I leave in a day for a walk, for water, for a voice note that isn't news but presence, the more I recognize myself when the mirror shows up in unexpected places. Jae-ho Pyong kept turning little moments into celebrations. A good take on the first try, a stretch that finally felt right, lights out at a sane hour. It's hard to overstate how much those small celebrations change a person who's used to skipping straight to the grind. Jimin brought me a question, the way only he can, soft but precise. Are you letting love keep you gentle when you're tired, or are you spending gentleness like money you think you can earn back tomorrow? I carried that one for days. Tiredness isn't a crime, but it can be a thief if you don't guard the part of you that knows how to be kind. We had a weekend at the kids' class where a new group showed up, voices like new paper, unsure how much pressure they could take before tearing. We did the slow work. Low humming, shoulders down, breath like you're telling your chest. It doesn't have to be brave yet, just honest. She walked the room with that steady rhythm I've come to trust, adjusting stance, catching eyes, offering a nod that said, "You're enough sound before you make any sound." During a break, a little girl asked me if I ever get scared to sing, because I look brave on videos. I told her brave usually looks ordinary from the inside. It looks like drinking water, grounding your feet, choosing to show up before the confidence arrives. I said the note doesn't need you to be fearless, it needs you to be breathing. She held my gaze like she was deciding whether to believe me, then nodded and wrapped both hands around a paper cup of water like it was part of the instrument. When she sang again, it wasn't perfect, it was true. You could feel the room change shape to hold that truth without asking it to be louder. On the walk back to the train, she asked me what I'm most grateful for right now. The answer came easily in my mouth. That love is teaching me to be simple without being small. I'm not shrinking my life. I'm shaping it so the parts that matter can breathe. We talked about futures without promising ones we can't control. We talked about families and where tradition fits when you're trying to grow something new without breaking what held you. We talked about money with the lights on, not to measure worth, but to make sure generosity has a path and pressure doesn't get a secret vote. None of it was dramatic, none of it would trend. It felt like laying bricks where a door might be someday, careful and slow, making sure the frame is level. Attention swelled again like it always does when people decide they're bored and pick a new story to wear your face. I felt the familiar heat climbing my neck, the urge to fix the narrative with words and proof. Instead, I opened the window and listened to the city exist without me for a minute. I texted her the sentence we decided would be our anchor. Choose the room, not the crowd. She sent back, I'm in the room. It's amazing how much that simple image can calm the river in your head. A room you choose together has better air than 1,000 opinions, even when those opinions love you. Especially then. I took a day to be with my family. No announcements, just time. We cooked badly and laughed loudly and told stories nobody else would care about because nobody else was there. At one point, someone asked me what's different about me lately. And I said, I feel less breakable. Not because life got easier, but because I stopped asking love to be a shield and started using it like soil. You grow roots in soil, you hold, you bend with wind because you can. And when a storm takes a branch, you grieve it and keep standing. That's the kind of strong I want. Not the brittle kind that shatters when it finally meets its mat. Back at the apartment that night, I put the leftovers in the fridge and wrote a few lines in a notebook. I'm not trying to turn into anything, just lines to catch feelings that would slip away if I didn't ask them to stay. I wrote that I want to keep choosing steadiness over spectacle, breath over noise, kindness over speed. I wrote that I want to be a person who can be found in the same place my promises live. I wrote that love is a daily practice of showing up without a script and trusting that who you are is already a good start. When I closed the notebook, the room felt lighter, like it had exhaled with me. Before sleep, I scrolled to that picture. Taeyoung sent a few days earlier sunlight on a chipped mug beside a newspaper folded in half. Nothing impressive. Everything beautiful. I thought about how much of my life used to happen in the gaps between big moments, unattended and unwatered. Now those gaps are where most of the good grows. It doesn't ask me to be perfect. It asks me to be there. And I am. Not always gracefully, not always on time, but more fully than I've ever been. If I almost gave up on love, it's only because I hadn't learned how to notice it when it came in looking like ordinary days. She showed me where to look and how to keep looking when the light changes. That's enough. more than enough. That's a life I can stand inside without pretending, and I don't want to leave.